Long before Russell Wilson quarterbacked the Seahawks, Jim Zorn was the very first quarterback of the team back in 1976. He's had a storied career, which has come full circle as he prepares to take on another role as Seattle's first to ever do it. Jim is the first coach and general manager of the XFL's Seattle Dragons. Great to have you here, Jim. And let's start with the Dragons. And what has been the biggest challenge for you so far as you get closer to training camp and the start of the season?
Well, I think the biggest challenge since we are starting up is finding a place to practice, finding a place for players to be housed in. We've done we've run through a lot of details. We're going to be practicing at Memorial Stadium, which is an older high school stadium, but really going to be fun to give it a little bit of a facelift in the locker room areas. And those have been the challenges of communicating, getting permitting, and just getting the opportunity to field a team here. Probably the other issues I think have been, getting the team put together. And right now we have an initial team, and we go to camp very, very soon.
We are holding the new football, so what do you think of it? It's a little different than the NFL ball.
Well, there's some changes. It's got the same actual dimensions as an NFL ball. They've kind of designed it in the shape of the NFL ball, but some of the differences are the logos, obviously. What's unique about this ball is each team, there are 8 teams in the XFL to start with here, and each team will have their own colored label of their team. So ours, we have orange, a green, and then a blue, but our football has a green and orange logo on it. They also have an X. If you look at the tip, there's an X on the end of each side of the ball, and it kind of, I think, gives it a little XFL flair, and the laces are the same, but I think our quarterbacks are going to like it. It's well put together. It's well designed, I'd say.
Well, I'll ask one last question about it because I think, and you may not know this, but when you go on the road, you'll be playing with your actual football, not their football, when you're on offense.
Yes. Much like the NFL does today, they have their own logo, they have their own bag of balls, and they all get it changed out per offense. So we'll have the same mechanism here. When we play on offense, we'll be using a Dragon labeled football.
Is it safe to say you were reluctant to take this job in the first place?
Well, I think the reluctancy was the initial, just the word XFL. That league many, many years ago was not a successful league, and there were a lot of things that didn't look like football. And so, yes, the reluctancy came out in thinking, okay, somebody's going to have to tell me what this is all about. And I thought right from the start, Oliver Luck, who's our commissioner, and several of the people that were hired to be involved actually were solid football personnel. And so as we continued to talk, I thought that not only were they talking about playing real football, competitive football, they were also talking to other former head coaches and the like to come into this league. And I was talking to those guys as well. And everybody was touching base and kind of getting a feel for what this XFL was going to be all about. And a lot of us decided to dive in and to accept the challenge and all the things that come with it from a startup standpoint.
Yeah, it almost feels like, if you're practicing at Memorial Stadium, it almost feels like, hate to say it, but grassroots, kind of like you guys are, right from the scratch on this thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues is just to make sure that there's a budget that we stay within. 1, 2, I think it would be hard to build something in our community today and get it ready for an XFL season, if you will. We do get to play in CenturyLink, so some of the things are absolutely right on, and then some of the things are just startup. But I would say this, our community, the school district, the community, everybody has been so supportive of helping us get started. I just couldn't be more excited for our players and the coaching staff, and even the staff that has agreed to come in and help us have a pretty good start to a program.
Yeah, I've seen your staff, and that looks good. Your experience is great. And you're right, there's been a lot of groundswell support around here. People love the logo, the colors, and they're excited about the season. But let me ask you this. Back in 2008, 2008, you took your first NFL head coaching job with Washington, couple years there. How much did you learn from that, and what can you bring to this job?
Oh, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from that experience. I wish I was still in that experience, but I think from the things that I've learned is to make sure that I have a staff, that I get to hire, and because I didn't necessarily hire my staff in D.C., and I've been able to do that, and also not be, there's the idea that we're working in a brand new situation which nobody's had experience in. So I'm trying to use my common sense and really trying to rely on everybody, not just me. I'm not going to be the sole decision maker in a lot of these little areas that other people have a lot of expertise in that I've hired. So I want to make sure I use their talent as well, and I'm hoping to allow our players just to really be freed up and have fun and play hard and go through this process of building as we go along here. I think our perspective is long range, not just a little firecracker that goes off and that's it. I'm hoping that we can develop something long term, and I'm hoping the experience that I've had with being a head coach and also being an assistant coach and being a player can come into it as well.
As an assistant coach with Mike Holmgren, you worked with the quarterbacks. You get a lot of credit for the development of some of the quarterbacks that have been here.
Yeah, I think I get the idea of what it is to play quarterback in the National Football League because I've done it as a player. I've coached it and observed. And when I look at QBs, I can see some things. Usually QBs, if they're hitting on all cylinders, you leave them alone, you let them play. But you got to keep them focused a little bit on the fundamentals, some of the techniques that got them there. Because a lot of them, most of them have been coached. And one of the reasons they're there is because they've listened and they've worked there. And the coaches have done a great job because they've just brought out their natural talent, right? So the whole idea is to not overcoach and to let those guys express themselves and their talents, yet play with some discipline so they can make the kind of difficult decisions in 2.4 seconds that they have to make on a football field at any given time. My job as an assistant was to make sure that they've experienced a lot of those things in practice so that it feels natural when they're out there playing.
The Ravens have kind of done that. They've tailored their offense to Lamar Jackson. Is that kind of, as a head coach of this Dragons football team, how important is that to tailor the offense around your quarterback's abilities?
I think it's probably inevitable. Yes, it has to be. It has to be that way because certain quarterbacks have the ability to move around, to throw the ball at different arm angles, to use their legs. The key thing for Baltimore is to keep Lamar healthy, right? So he has to be coached in how to get out of bounds, how to get down, how to continue to and then not worry if he makes a decision that gets him sacked, because every great created play could also come with a play that didn't quite happen the way he had hoped it would. There's a spy or somebody else he didn't see got him, and you got to live with that a little bit. The other type of quarterback that's playing well in this league are the ones that just drop back. They get great pass protection, and they can hammer throws that are accurate with with the kind of decision making, trajectory, all those kinds of things. So it doesn't take one style of quarterback to win, but it takes a bit of a disciplined quarterback and a coach that allows that guy to express the talent that he has and to use it.
Well, take me back to 1976 then, when Jack Patera is your head coach and you come in, you're scrambling all over the place. And I remember some tremendous scrambles and throws that you made. Did Jack kind of let you do your thing?
Yes, and encouraged it. I mean, we developed a sprint draw series between Jerry Rome and Andy McDonald and Howard Mudd. It was a draw, and Sherman Smith was the running back at the time. And we would sprint, come off that edge. I'd either give it to Sherman on a draw that was out, over the tackle, basically, on either side, strong or weak side, or I'd keep it and sprint and run and throw on the run, either way, right or left. And then we'd run play action off of it as well, where I'd stop and throw the ball. So you bet. And then, I don't know what it was about me, but I just had this sense of when I needed to explode and create a lane, or I could see a lane and run in it, run through it, and get downfield. So yeah, I felt like I was utilizing some of the talents that I had.
You've been referred to as different nicknames in the past and different compared to different quarterbacks. I think they called you the Lefty Fran Tarkenton back in the day. Did you appreciate those kind of?
Well, kind of, but I always tried to fight to have my own identity, and I think most quarterbacks do. Fran Tarkenton is a great QB. I used to always say, well, Fran, he does a great job scrambling behind the line of scrimmage, but I also go downfield. And we had quarterback draws, and we had scrambles where I knew, when people were covered, I wasn't going to turn back. Sometimes I'd turn back around and go the other way, but a lot of times I could see a clear lane forward, and I'd just go get all I could as far as yardage.
The scramble I loved most was against the Chargers. I think it was down in San Diego at the time. Do you remember that? And do you remember because you ran all over the place. I mean, all over the place. And you threw a touchdown pass, I think, at the end of it, didn't you?
Yeah, well, it was either a touchdown or it was really down close. It was to Dan Dornick.
That's right.
And how was he even down there? I think he was just watching. And because I was going one way, and then I went completely the other way, and then I came back around, and I just happened to see him downfield. I was going to my right. I still remember letting the ball go. I don't quite remember. I couldn't tell you what the play call was or what happened, but it turned out to be just a helter-skelter a bit, and I was able to keep the play alive. And I think our line always knew if their defensive lineman was changing directions, I was out of the pocket. I was doing something. All of a sudden, why did he stop rushing? And they got used to the idea that this guy was no longer pass rushing where I was sitting in the pocket. I was doing something different. And so they stayed alive to try to chip guys and help me keep the play alive.
Well, did you have a favorite play, a favorite scramble back in the day? I know you did a lot of them. It's a loaded question, but
yeah, we did. It is because I just think there were so many different ways I got out of the pocket. I can't remember really one or the other. I do remember another one where I scrambled back and forth and hit Sherman Smith on a play. I just turned back around, saw him hit a play, but I had probably scrambled for. It felt like 15 seconds. Here I am just going back and forth. Some of those plays are fun when they are successful. I do remember. I don't even need to say this, but I do remember getting hit in the head with a snap from center on a field goal, and we were going to kick it. And I'm looking at Efren Herrera, and the ball hits me in the head and goes back. I picked the ball up, and I did scramble around a bunch. Saw Dan Dornick again, threw him the ball for a minus 35-yard completion, which is how how you break records in the National Football League. You have minus yardage, right? And so those kinds of things. I'm thinking, all right, I see him, and he got tackled for a minus 35-yard gain.
Well, what happened? Like, were you just not? Did the center just snap it too soon?
No, the defensive line gave our snap count on field goal, and our center snapped it. He thought that was the snap. And so we then, after that, you wise up as a coach, and you have different code words. So we used different code words then so that they could not say something on the opposing defensive line and cause our center to snap it. Because all he said was, set! And the center thought I said it, and he snapped the ball. And I was looking at Efren Herrera, waiting for him to tell me he's ready.
Yeah, that's right. He has to give you that nod, and then you're off and running.
That's right.
I want to take you to that. When you went undrafted in 75, you were with the Cowboys for a little bit. Do you remember much about that other than the fact that you were with, one of the greatest to ever play the game in Roger Staubach?
That was just an incredible experience because at that time you could only have 43 players on the roster. There was no practice squad. There was no injured reserve per se. And I made the football team. And that was the year they had this is how old I am. In 1975, they had 13 rookies really make the team. And during the first week, they had to release a guy because Scott Laidlaw, who was our fullback, he got banged up a little bit, not enough to put him on injured reserve. So they cut me. They stayed with two quarterbacks. And, I was devastated because I had made the Dallas Cowboy football team in that year. And so they ended up staying with what they called the Dirty Dozen, right? That was Randy White's rookie year. That was Thomas Hollywood Henderson's first year, Bob Brunig. They had a bunch of guys. But on our staff, Tom Landry was the head coach. Dan Reeves, who was another head coach in the National Football League, he was the running back coach, right? Mike Ditka was the tight ends coach. This guy, this staff was storied. I mean, he just had, Gene Stallings was the defensive back coach. And so all these tremendous football coaches were on that staff. And we went to training camp with 120 pairs. We were there for about 4 weeks before the veterans even got in. When the veterans came in, we had pared the team down to 80 players. The veterans came in and added 40 more, so we had another 120 players. And we went through another 2 or 3 weeks of training camp. It was brutal, is what it was.
But you made it.
But I made it.
Undrafted free agent, and you made it.
I know. It was pretty cool.
Who gets credit for bringing Jim Zorn to the Cowboys? Because that's a diamond in the rough. Like, the Cowboys are like, who's this guy?
So I was not drafted. And remember this, there were 16 rounds back in that day. So 2 days, first day, then the second day, and nobody took me. When I got home, there were 4 contracts, free agent contracts, just mailed to me at minimums, and I chose the Dallas Cowboys. But Gil Brandt probably is the guy that would get credit because he's the guy that put the whole draft together. And at the end of the draft, you do scramble around, and you do find players that are free agents that actually make the team. And this year, not only did they draft well in Randy White and Thomas Henderson, but they also got some free agents that were pretty good as well. Not even a few more than just me.
But it's still such a great story that you talk about it. 16 rounds, you had 120 guys in camp for the most part, and you're a free agent, and you still make this team.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to feel just pretty darn proud of yourself.
It was exciting, and I wanted to make sure that they weren't going to cut me because I wasn't physically ready to play. And that was one of my main goals. They can cut you for, you can get cut and feel like you're good enough to play in the league and then go away and never play again. And that's kind of what we're hoping for, is some of these guys that have been passed up from NFL teams in the XFL, giving them another opportunity to say, wait a minute, I think you're making a mistake here. And so the players that come in are players that you see every year get cut and feel like, wait a minute, I'm not done. Wait a minute, somebody's made a mistake. So I wanted to eliminate everything that the Cowboys could cut me for, other than saying you're just not good enough.
Yeah.
You're really just not good enough. And I was in good shape. I studied. I disciplined myself not to do anything but make sure I was concentrating on how the coaches were helping me. And, I paid attention and worked hard.
Yeah. Well, it paid off for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, it was fun.
I was going to ask you a story about Landry, and just that coaching tree there is amazing that you talked about. But you might have a story about Ditka as a tight ends coach. But do you remember anything in that time?
Even Dan Reeves. I was going to be a holder because I was a kicker even in college and a holder in college. But Dan Reeves was the kind of the holding coach. He was the guy that worked the kicker, holder, and I remember him talking to me one day, and he asked me, he said, do you know how to punt? And I was going, well, I'll learn. If that's going to keep me from being a part of the Cowboys, I'll learn to punt. I said, why do you ask me that? He said, because we drafted a guy in the 3rd round. His name is Danny White, and he is with the USFL team. He signed with the USFL team, but we have his rights. He might be coming back to us in a year, and he's a punter. So I suggest you learn how to punt. I said, I'll do it.
Did
no,
you get it?
I'd gotten cut.
Yeah.
And so.
Do you think you could have punted?
Oh, I don't think so.
And people think, it's just kicking the ball, but it's hard, huh?
Yeah. And so, and then Danny White became backup QB and punter for a lot of years, and then became the starter there. But I remember that conversation with Dan asking me if I could punt because there was, and he saw the writing on the wall. They're probably going to keep this guy, and so even then I realized that being an NFL player is really difficult because there's always somebody coming up trying to replace you. And I really believe that's what backup QBs need to really be thinking about in this league, how they become starters. Not being so patient to sit behind a guy and not get better in the offseason. In the offseason is when these guys have to learn how to get closer and closer to that starter. And because, you anoint the starter because he's earned it, right? He's earned the right, or you drafted him in the 1st round. But that doesn't mean he has to keep it for years and years if you can see yourself and work yourself into becoming a better player. It's tough. That competition is tough.
The training camp stories that you have when you first showed up with the Seahawks, do you remember anything? Were you guys out at Cheney? Do you remember anything about those days?
When we went out there, again, much like our team here with the Dragons, it was brand new. Everything was new. So as the coaching staff was together, they had 10 coaches like we do right now. Can you imagine that in the National Football League now? They had 10 coaches. So guys had to double up. Jerry Rome was the receiver coach and the quarterback coach. Guys were multiplying their responsibilities. But I'll never forget that first year out in Cheney. We had a linebacker from the Baltimore Colts, a guy named Mike Curtis. Really had a tremendous career, and this was the twilight of his career. And I remember it being about 105 degrees, and because Jack Patera was from the Minnesota regime, they did not have water at practice. Jack Patera thought that was a good thing, and so we did not have water at all at practice in Cheney. And here it is, it's 105 degrees, and I will remember Mike Curtis calling the NFLPA office or the league office to ask if we had to go out and practice in 105 degree weather, or was there a temperature ceiling for NFL teams to have to practice in. And I thought, nobody would ever do that, but Mike He was veteran enough and salty enough to ask those questions. So,
what was the answer?
The answer was get out there and let's go, and we did. And
no water,
not at all.
How in the world did you guys get through that?
We had these little yellow salt pills. We had to, and you had to pre-hydrate. I mean, you hydrated to be able to last those 2.5 hour practices. And then we used to get the ball boys to sneak ice chips to us in towels. Give me a towel, and there'd be ice chips, and there we'd be in the back between series, eating on ice chips and stuff.
Oh
my
gosh!
The amazing thing was, maybe a couple guys fell out. Had to have an IV after practice or whatever, but hardly anybody was hurting after that. And we sweat it all out every single day. We just had to make sure. You had to make sure you were hydrated enough to go out there and last in that weather.
And was it 2-a-days back then? Did you ever do 3-a-days?
No, we did 2-a-days.
2-a-days.
Yeah, we did 2-a-days. It was wild, and in the heat. It wasn't in the morning. It was steamy and hot, and then in the afternoon it was boiling.
I can't even imagine you guys going out there without water. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna show you a couple of pics. This is you and Largent.
Yeah, this was Steve was at the Pro Bowl in Hawaii, and I had my rainbow colored bathing suit on, and we were looking at the surf out there, thinking, should we go out there?
Do you remember them taking that pic? Like, do you know when they took that pic?
No,
just popped up somewhere?
That's in a pack of cards that they put together for Steve, and kind of honoring his career. And that was one of the Pro Bowl, kind of a Pro Bowl picture. Was there a poster or back then, because they took some really cheesy posters, it looks like, back when you look at Jim Zorn images come across, and Steve Largent, same thing. And were there a poster or? Paul, we get ripped for doing the milk commercials, right? They show milk commercials with milk mustaches and stuff. We thought they were pretty cool, but neither one of us, Steve or I, could sing. I felt like I could sing a little bit better than Steve, but we had a great time. I mean, those are fun commercials. Yeah, there's some cheesy stuff, but it's got to be the same today. I mean, some of the things you see on ads and things, you think, not sure that he should have. I'm not sure he should have done that. Do you ever remember this one? Don't mess with the Z-Man. Or is that something someone made up? Okay, so this was recent. That is a wig. Okay, this was. You never had a hair like that. Yeah, no, I used to have my hair like that. That's what I thought. But that is a wig, and that was 2 years ago. Steve and I did a commercial or a series for the Washington State Lottery, and that was part of the kind of bringing us back to old school. So Steve had a wig, I had a wig. I still have that wig. I should have worn it this morning for you, with long hair. That was my hair length. When I played. You look like a rock star there. Oh, gosh. Everything but. All right, I have two questions for you because I know I got to let you go. We'll take it back to the Dragons in a sec, but you brought out a slip and slide back in the day as a quarterbacks coach to teach quarterbacks how to slide correctly. Did that work? Were players looking at you sideways? How did that go? Well, I brought it out. I did that first in Detroit. When I was with the Detroit Lions, our quarterbacks just were awful trying to get down, and so I got a Detroit Tiger pitcher to come over and teach sliding. I'd never thought he was going to do a slip and slide, but he said, "Okay, I'll come over, but you got to get a slip and slide for me to teach these guys." And I thought, what a great idea! So I got a slip and slide, put water on it, and we took. We took cleats off, and in the heat of the day, and it's humid, it's hot. Right after the practice was over, I took these guys aside and I said, "Okay, we're gonna do a little extra today. We're gonna learn how to slide." And we probably spent about a half an hour. But then all of a sudden, other guys start getting into it too. Everybody wanted to get wet, and that's how I first taught Charlie Batch how to slide, and he needed help. He really did need help. So we taught him how to slide. And then I brought it here because I came to Seattle and taught it to Matt Hasselbeck, Trent Dilfer, Brock Heward, Seneca Wallace, and we had a great time doing it. And then Mike, said, Mike Holmgren was going, this guy's crazy. What is this? But it turned out to be, I think, a safe way, and actually a fun way, but a safe way, and an important way to teach QBs how to get down and to not pound their arms. And you see Russell Wilson does a great job, and I don't know if they probably haven't used slip and slide with him, but he does a great job sliding because what he does is hang on to the ball. Matt Hasselbeck used to do a great job. He'd hang on to the ball with one arm, but the other arm would go down and pound into the ground. So the slip and slide helped him because he could do it over and over again, have fun doing it, but do it over and over again and get that feeling of having both arms up and only just sliding without your arms. Because if you put your arm down, you never know if a guy's coming in to hit you, and you never know how hard you're going to hit it, and it jars your shoulder. It could jar your throwing arm. So keeping your arms in and up, that's the main purpose of learning how to slide. And I not only used the slip and slide, but I would also help them. They got more confidence to slide without the slip and slide. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to wean them off it, don't you?
Yeah. You got to wean them off it. That's what I did.
Well, it's been great visiting with you, man, and I wish you the best of luck with the new endeavor here with the XFL and the Seattle Dragons. And I know people are looking forward to seeing you put that team on the field, and looking forward to seeing you back on the sidelines. So
it'll be fun.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of moving parts, and the one thing I do know is we're going to line up. We're going to play 5 games in CenturyLink Field, and there's a lot of fans that have already bought in, and they're going to be sitting yelling. Well, they'll probably be able to hear us coach on the sideline because there won't be 70,000 initially, but we're going to have a great time whatever we do out there.
Yeah, and it's going to be a rabid fan base no matter what, so it'll be exciting. Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate it, and best of luck.
Thank you.